to the channel. My name is Aryant, and today we're going to be talking about my Stanford admissions file. Now, to give some brief background, I am currently a freshman at Stanford University, and fortunately enough, I was able to review parts of my admissions file. Now, before we get started with this video, be sure to like the video below, and if you haven't already, subscribe to our channel so that you get our latest college advice videos. Now, before we get into my analysis of the Stanford admissions file, full disclaimer here, the information that I'm providing is based on knowledge that I researched over the internet and forums, and so the information or parts of it may not be necessarily true. It's really difficult to understand the actual admissions process because Stanford themselves don't release exactly how they judge an applicant. And so the information that I've gotten and the way I analyzed my application was based on how others previously have done it. For those of you who don't already know this, when you're applying to colleges, most students waive their rights to review their teacher recommendations. And basically that shows colleges that you trust your teacher recommendations and that you will not look them over. However, most students don't realize that they actually have the ability to review their application with edits from the admissions officers without violating their FERPA agreement. So that's exactly what I did as a freshman. I basically asked to review my admissions file. Now, the way most students can view their admissions file, no matter what university they attend in the US, is you send an email to your student registrar office at the university, and I believe it's within 45 days the university must respond to you if you ask particularly to view your admissions file. And then basically you set up a time to view this admissions file. Now, the regular process of seeing this admission file would be that you would go to a particular office and you would be given a certain amount of time to view the file and only take paper notes, which means you can't take screenshots of it, you can't record it, take pictures, any of that stuff. Now, unfortunately, due to COVID-19, the pandemic, students who currently want to view their admissions file may not be able to. It depends on their universities. I have heard that some colleges, because their admissions offices are closed, they have to wait until these offices reopen for them to view the admissions file. However, for Stanford particularly, I was able to get in touch with the university basically put me in touch with a FERPA officer who was able to read my application aloud and on Zoom, and basically I just took paper notes. Now, due to that, obviously I wasn't able to see the actual admissions file, but I was able to follow along as the FERPA officer read it aloud to me and take full notes. Now, let's get started. I'm gonna start reviewing my admissions file, sort of give an analysis, summary on my admissions file, as well as a reflection of what I learned after reading this file. There were certain things that sort of stunned me and I was sort of curious about after reading this, so it'll be interesting for sure. Now, everything I talk about, whether it's the ratings, the factors and comments left on this admissions file, pertain specifically to Stanford University and the way they handle college admissions. Other universities may be using different numeric systems or different criteria in their admissions. This is particularly for Stanford. So the first thing in the admissions file is they comment down your GPA, and that's your GPA, I believe, of simply your sophomore and junior year. Particularly for Stanford admissions, they don't actually review your freshman year grades in high school. They mainly only look at your sophomore and junior grades in high school. So that's something to take note of. They mentioned the type of application I had. They mentioned that my selected major was bioengineering, and I also put alternative ones of civil and environmental engineering as well as aerospace engineering. So those are my three things. And at the top right of the whole file, that is, they wrote admit. So along with this, they also put a 2 on this file. Based on really brief research I did online, 2 might indicate that I'm Asian American. I'm not sure about that at all, to be honest. It says 2, but based on the little bit that I reviewed online, people mentioned talking about how 2 might mean that I'm an Asian applicant. Again, this pertains only to Stanford's admissions. Along with that came my GPA. This was my GPA that I sent from my application through high school. That includes my freshman year. So they basically separated my sophomore and junior year GPA versus the GPA that I sent starting from freshman year. And they also calculated the Stanford university GPA, which came to around a 4.0, as well as mentioned that I have a most demanding rigor. That probably came from my high school counselor when they were sending in the high school report. They also mentioned my rank in school because my school does do ranks. My high school did do ranks, numerical ranks. And then they mentioned my SAT and ACT scores. Now after that, now comes the ratings. So basically in Stanford admissions, you have two readers, I believe, and maybe a third reader. You might or may not have a third reader. Based on my admissions file, I don't believe I had a third reader, though I may be mistaken. Now, all these ratings are numerical, and they go from 1 to 5. Now, based on my knowledge, 1 means the top, the best, and it goes down after that till 5. And they rate the applicant from 1 to 5 on various criteria. Now, the criteria as mentioned, based on my research, was HSR, which means high school reputation. That's basically coming from your high school report that your guidance counselor basically sends to these colleges. That includes like graduation rate, how many students go into a 4-year college, what's your average SAT score in the school, things like that. And then comes SUP, called supplements. Now, to my knowledge, SUP or supplemental, basically it means all the recommendations that you got from teachers, mentors, and your counselors. The third criteria is EC or extracurriculars. Now that pertains to any activities or honors that you get throughout high school. And the fourth one, which is actually a little bit unique to Stanford, is called SPIV, and that basically means self-presentation and intellectual vitality. Now my understanding is that they get this value partially at least from all your essays, including your Common App essay. Basically, they obviously read through those essays and create a score based on that. And again, these are ranged from 1 to 5. And then in the end, the reader provides a total evaluation. After that, that's reader 1, and reader 2 does the exact same thing. Now, keep in mind, while the readers report from a 1 to 5 range, from what I have seen, most students who get admitted usually score between 1 to 3, maybe 4. And so that's something to keep in mind, is that most students, even though the rating system is from 1 to 5, most admitted students usually score between 1 to 4, and obviously there may be some exceptions. Now, after that comes the interview portion. Now, this is the interview that you get from a Stanford alumni, and they grade this based on the IV, intellectual vitality, which is something very specifically Stanford is known to look at. And if for those of you who don't know, intellectual vitality, in short, it basically means forgetting about your grades or what you have done, do you have the mindset of having the determination to do something to help others, that kind of a thing. So it does not really have to do with are you scoring high grades or do you have really good extracurriculars. Those criteria are there, but this intellectual vitality is different than that. Along with that comes depth and commitment, as well as character. And so the interviewers grade between a 1 and a 6, I believe, in the numerical scale. And so they provide their grades. Now, just to let you know of how the timeline goes between readers. So my reader 1 who read my application 6 days after I submitted it on Common App, which is quite fast. There, they provided some brief comments for me. I've been into bioengineering. So basically, they mentioned how I had some focus in biomedical engineering, and they talked about some of my extracurriculars. And basically, in the end, they said, file to consider, which I assume means that that allowed me to go to the next round to reader 2. After that, they did mention some biographical information. They mentioned my information of where I live, which school did I go to, where is it located, as well as my parents, and where are my parents from, etc. like that. So they did mention that. Along with that, they did mention also my rank in my class, over basically the number of students that were in my class, as well as the number of AP classes that I took, because my school only offered AP classes. It used the AP system, not the IB system. And they also mentioned my top 3 honors or extracurriculars. So they mentioned that. And then after that, 8 days later, reader number 2 read my application. Now, from what I understand, reader number 2's job is basically to either agree with reader 1 or provide their own comments if they do not agree with reader 1's assessment. Now, based on my reader 2's comments, for the most part, they agreed with reader 1 who read my application. And so my application was able to move on to the committee round. Now, from my understanding, applicants who get admitted from Stanford, I believe, have to be selected from the committee. So basically, if you're going to be accepted, you have to pass the reader 1, reader 2. I do not believe I had a third reader for my application, but then also the committee review. Now, in the committee review, basically, this is from the prep form that they used in the committee when talking about me as an applicant. This basically happened 5 days after my second reader read my application. And basically, they talked about some strengths that I had, some weaknesses in my application, and what was their final assessment. And in the end, the final assessment was to admit me as an applicant and join the class of 2024 at Stanford. That was a sort of quick overview of the admissions file, how they grade, etc. But there were a lot of things that I learned from my application, and I want to share a bit of that with you. First things first, when colleges talk about holistic admissions process, they really do mean it. When I went through my file, when I looked at these notes over again, I was quite shocked actually, because the reasons why I actually got in, or the potential reasons why, were not actually the reasons I expected. For me personally, I expected to get in maybe because of some of my activities that I did in high school, or even maybe my essay. Those are what I thought were the reasons why I got in. Again, it was a shock that I got in, but when I was thinking about it at first, I was thinking maybe those were the reasons, my activities maybe, or my essay. However, after reviewing this file, I realized that that necessarily wasn't 100% true. While yes, my extracurriculars, they made a difference, and my grades and my essays, it was also because of my interview. And I was quite surprised. I really didn't think much of the interview, even though it actually made a really big difference. If there was one lesson that I learned that I would like to share is don't take any factor in the admissions process for granted. They look at high school report. They look at your recommendations. They look at your extracurriculars. They look at your grades. They look at your essays. Contrary to many beliefs, I know that some students just think that college admissions officers don't have the time to review everything in files. From what I've learned in this admissions file, the admissions officers clearly spent their time. They were reviewing my file in a span of 2 weeks almost. And they really went through and they looked at every aspect of me in terms of their criteria before deciding to admit me. There wasn't like one thing that made me like get accepted immediately. It was a factor of different things that made me have, I guess, maybe a slight edge. And allowed me to get admitted. So what I've learned is don't take any fear for advantage. Do your best in all of them, because it's the little things that count in the end. Second thing that I learned is do activities and things that you love. I know a lot of students personally for me, I did very few activities, but I did activities that I loved and enjoyed, and those were things I spent a lot of time on. For example, I spent some time on scientific research because I was really into research. I had a lot of knowledge in like aviation because I'm so interested in like aerospace and aviation topics, and that probably showed in my application. I know that a lot of students want to do every club possible, get every leadership position because they think the more the better, but that's not true. Honestly, some of the activities that I did didn't even make it into my readers' comments or my admissions file. And simply because, from my understanding, that's probably because those are not activities that I spend the most time on. And the activities that I spend the most time on are the ones that admissions officers are really going to look into. So it's not about quantity, it's more about quality. It's about, are you doing the things that you loved versus are you doing things that you did simply to beef up your college application. And I strongly urge students to do things that they love because it's gonna show. It's gonna show in your application, and honestly, that's the best way to do it. Just do things that you love. Other than that, all I can say is college admissions process, it can be stressful at times, and if you got into your top school, or if you didn't, if you read your admissions file, or if you didn't, or you still need to apply to colleges, just know that you should, for especially students who are applying to college or are going to apply to colleges, all you can do is just put in your best effort, put in your best effort and it will show on the application. That's the best you can do, and I think that's the best anyone can ask for. Um, it's difficult. There is no like one secret or many secrets to getting into a particular college. Clearly, admissions officers are reading your application. They are taking it into account. They're not simply setting it aside because they don't have time or something like that. I know that some of the myths that I've heard from other students, clearly they're spending time. So put in all your effort and try do the best that you can in your college application to show who you are. But again, do things that you really love, and that will show in your application. And honestly, that's it for this video. That's a brief overview of my admissions file, basically about Stanford's admissions file, what I learned. Again, don't take any criteria for granted. And really, if you do that, you should shine. That's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope that this helped provide some glimpse into the Stanford admissions process. And one more note that I also found interesting before we conclude is that the time when I did my interview was actually the time when my first reader read my application. So my assumption is that they weren't actually able to see my interviewer's comments because my interview happened at the same time that my first reader read my application. So that's just something to take note of, I guess. But I mean, that's it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this helped. If you have any comments or suggestions for the next video, please drop it in the comments below. If you have any questions about my admissions file in particular or suggestions for what to do for our next video, please again comment down below. Thank you so much again for watching. If you haven't, again, please subscribe to our channel. We just want to provide the best college advice, college admissions advice that we can as students. And I thought this admissions file talking about the way Stanford in particular probably does their admissions process. So I hope that sort of opened that curtain. We were able to get a glimpse into the admissions process. Thanks again for watching, and we will see you in the next one. Thank you.